Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's 3 at 3. It is November 29th, 2022, and I am here today to answer 3 of the questions that came in about publishing and writing. I just realized that today we actually have a little bit of a theme going because there's some agent editor questions, and there's also one question about indie publishing. So I'm going to answer those. Before I begin, I just want to remind you all that this week, December 2nd, which is a Friday, I am hosting the Making the Reader Character Connection webinar. It is only $9. It's also free if you need it to be free. So please join us. I will drop the link to that in the chat. And if you can't see it in the chat, then please email us, or you can find it on our website. If you go to my website, www.angelajames.co, a pop-up will pop up and it will give you access to the link to register for that. So I look forward to that. Also, just to let you know, stay tuned because next week, starting next Thursday, December 8th, we have something free coming to you. It's about $100 value and we're giving it to you for free. So make sure that you stay tuned for that. Okay, in the meantime, let's get started with these questions. The first question is, an editor said their list was full and she could not take my manuscript. Please explain that for me. So when an editor looks at your manuscript, and in this case, there was a little bit more context around the question. In this case, it was an editor who had looked at her manuscript, I think for a critique. And so she said, the editor then said that the manuscript was ready to go, but that her list was full, so she couldn't take the manuscript, or she didn't want the agent to send it because the list was full. So what does it mean when an editor says her list is full? It really means just that. It means that she has enough authors and manuscripts that she's not acquiring. She's closed to submissions. She's not taking on anything new. This can happen with both editors and agents where their list becomes full. It's a temporary thing. It doesn't last forever, but it just means that this agent has so many manuscripts that are scheduled in the next probably 2 to 3 years that she doesn't have the capacity to even look at or take on any other manuscripts because there would be nowhere to schedule it. So in most cases, publishers have a certain number of publishing slots that they are allocating because each publishing slot costs a certain amount of money and a certain amount of resources. And resources aren't just money, but things like marketers, publicity, cover artists, the sales team. So you can't, the publisher can't take on just an unlimited number of books. They have a set number of books. And usually each editor within a publisher has a set number of books for their list over a certain period of time. So when an editor says that their list is full, they just mean that right now they don't have any publishing slots available because what they have contracted is filling their publishing spots for the next several years. When an agent says that their list is full, it's a little different because agents don't have a certain number of publishing spots, but what they do have is a limited capacity. So you don't want an agent who's just taking every author or taking hundreds of authors, because then that agent doesn't have time to work with you. They don't have time to be your business partner. They don't have time to chat with you about your goals. They don't have time to pitch your book. So an agent only has so much capacity on their list as well. It's just a bit different, but an agent doesn't have time to do all of those things for all of their clients if they're just continuously building and building and building their list. So when an editor says their list is full, when an agent says their list is full, it's temporary, but it means that right now they just don't have the capacity to take on your manuscript. So hopefully that helps and gives you a little bit of an idea of why editors and agents might close to submissions, and helps you realize that it is just temporary. So don't give up. And not every editor and agent is closing to submissions at the same time. And there's other editors and other agents that you can pitch to. So let's go on to the next question. Is there a minimum number of email list recipients and online followers that publishers use to determine if a book will sell? Oh, this is a really good question. So the answer is yes and no. It also depends on what genre you're asking me about. So I wouldn't say that there is a minimum number of newsletter and social media followers that publishers are looking for, but I will say at any given time, they have an idea of what they're looking for. So when it comes to fiction, the most important thing when we're looking at fiction is going to be the book itself. The publishers are going to be like, okay, what's the hook? Is it something that we can sell to the retail buyer? And the retail buyer is that person who's buying books on behalf of Barnes and Noble, on behalf of Walmart, on behalf of Target and Indigo. So they're looking at the hook, the sales into the retail buyer, and then reader demand. So for fiction, whether or not you have a platform can matter, because a publisher doesn't want to take on all debut authors. But if the book is good enough, it's not going to matter. So in the case of fiction, that's the yes and no question. If you have a big following, like let's say you're Kristen Ashley, Kennedy Ryan, Tessa Dare, Katie Robert, Vi Keeland, Aurora Rose Reynolds, like authors like that who have some sort of like well-known platform where readers are buying from them, then the publisher is going to be more interested in their pitch. If you're somebody who's a debut, your pitch needs to be like super tight, like really great. And because you don't have a platform yet. So they're going to be building the platform with you based on your book. Now, if you're a brand new author, sure, you can start a platform. If you don't have a book out, you can start a social media following, you can start a newsletter. I always encourage those things if you have the time for those. But you don't have readers yet. Like you don't have proven buyers, proven readers yet. So there is no minimum number, but they are going to be looking at what you've already been doing, whether or not you're engaging in social media. Are you starting to think about marketing? Like those things can matter. Okay. If you're writing nonfiction, on the other hand, so let's say you're writing a memoir. I've had a couple of questions about memoirs recently. Or if you're writing a self-help book or a prescriptive book is, think of it where it tells you how to do something. Then the publisher is going to be looking at your platform because they're going to be answering the question. They're going to be looking for the answer to the question, why this topic? So when it comes to memoirs are really hard to sell. If you're somebody like Michelle and Barack Obama, yes, of course the publishers want your memoirs because you have that platform. People are interested in your story. People are invested in you. If you're somebody who like only your family has ever heard of, memoir is going to be a really tough sell because the publisher is going to be looking for some reason that people are going to want to read and hear about your story. And of course, your story is important to you and your family and friends, but it may not be as important to the rest of the world. So when you're writing something like a memoir, the publisher goes, well, what's the hook of this story? Like, what's interesting about this story? Why is it so unique that people will buy this, even though they've never heard of this person? So in that case, then yes, of course, your platform matters. If you're writing a self-help book or a prescriptive book, again, something that's like laying out how people should do something, your platform is going to matter. Your social media numbers are going to matter. And when we talk about them mattering, we're talking about thousands and tens of thousands of people, not just a couple hundred or a couple thousand. It's really tens of thousands that they're looking for. They're looking for you're coming from a place of authority, like you've established your authority. So think of somebody who's like, remember Jillian Michaels? Jillian Michaels used to do The Biggest Loser TV show. And that created her platform. So now she's somebody that people want to read certain types of books from, diet books, exercise books, that type of thing. Now imagine your personal trainer from the gym thinks they have a really great framework for working out and they want to write a book. The publisher is going to look at that versus a book from Jillian Michael, and they're going to be wondering, why would people buy this book from a personal trainer at a local gym that they've never heard of? So that's where platform comes in for nonfiction. So the basic answer to, is there a minimum number of email list recipients and online followers that publishers use to determine if a book will sell, is again, yes and no. It depends on the genre, it depends on who you are, and it depends on the book's hook and how excited the publisher is about it, how unique it is, and how well they think it can sell. Now, let me give you just a little bit of hope here. There have been times when people who with no platform come out with something that is very unique or interesting or something that is super topical or timely, and then platform doesn't matter as much. So it can be just about the book. And if you're in the situation where you feel like you don't have a big platform, then focus on the book, because that is the one thing that you can control, and you can make the difference there as to whether or not the publisher will pick it up. All right. Hope that answered your question. And please let me know if you have any follow-up questions that I can answer in a future 3 at 3. All right. Last question. After 10 books traditionally published without an agent, I've decided to self-publish a series. Can you give me some tips that I might miss to make this happen? This is such a broad question. I looked at this question and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to answer this because there's so many things. There's so much in self-publishing. And so I really thought about, okay, what are some things that somebody who is coming from traditional publishing to indie publishing might not know or might get overwhelmed with, or um, people might get wrong and tell them. So I have a couple of pieces of advice for you, and it's probably not what you're expecting. And then I will give you one piece of advice that you might have been like, that's a little bit more in line with what you were expecting. My biggest piece of advice when anybody is going into indie publishing is to figure out how you want your business to fit around your life. How much time do you have to spend on your business? And what are your business values? Because those two things are going to help you determine what you are and aren't willing to do within your indie publishing career, also within your traditional publishing career. But as an example, a lot of times people will give you advice that simply isn't going to work for you, but they insist that it is the only way to be successful in indie publishing. This is probably the one thing that I hear most often from authors who come to me for coaching and consultation, and they're just really frustrated because they have heard so often that you have to be able to write really fast. You have to have rapid releases. And that is the only way to be successful. And they get frustrated and disappointed and defeated because they've already decided, well, I can't do that because it's not within, they can't fit that into their life. So my answer to you is, don't let anybody convince you that there is something you absolutely have to do in order to be successful. Because if there was one thing, if there was just one thing, everybody would be successful because everybody would do that one thing. But the fact is, different things work for different people. So you figure out how much time you have to spend, how fast you can write, how often you want to publish, whether or not you're going to burn yourself out. Figure out what you like for book pricing. Do you want to use Kindle Unlimited or do you want to go wide? Investigate all of the pros and cons of both. And don't let anybody tell you that there is only one way. The other thing is, don't try to do all of the things. If you try and do all the things, if you're trying to do all the social media, plus write 5,000 words a day, publish a book a month, be on Facebook, do Facebook ads, do Amazon ads, do a podcast, interact with your readers, have a newsletter, you're going to burn out. You're going to burn out. And I will tell you that when we see authors burn out, they've almost never come back with the same passion and enthusiasm and love for publishing and writing that they had when they first started out. So I always encourage people to try and avoid burnout before you get it. And that means not trying to do all of the things. So figuring out how to make self-publishing work for you, not how it works for your bestie, not how it works for your critique partners, not how it works for that best-selling author or that lady's husband who's a best-selling author. Don't figure out how it works for them. You can look at what's working for them, but just because it's working for them doesn't mean that's the way you need to do it. Okay. Couple of things though, practical advice that you might miss in indie publishing. The first thing is you as a traditionally published author never had to think about pricing. So when you're thinking about pricing, remember that pricing does not need to be static, meaning you don't have to set the price and forget about it. You can play with pricing. It can go up, it can go down. My recommendation is always don't punish early adopters, your fans, meaning don't set the book price really high on release day and then be like, oh, this really isn't selling. And a month later be like, hey, it's on sale. Because all that's doing is telling your fans, the people who buy early and buy right away from you, that they should wait. So reward the early adopters and then raise the price. So play with pricing. Pricing isn't static. The other thing is remember to get professional advice on covers and to look at what's selling. So many authors just go with what they like, what they think is a great representation of the book, and they try and art direct their cover, and they forget that covers are really important in marketing. And if you're not a professional, if you don't have experience designing a cover and art directing a cover, you may get a cover that doesn't fit into your genre, that doesn't stand out in marketing, and that isn't going to sell books. So be humble when it comes to your cover and be open with an open mind and let people, experts, not just everybody, experts in cover art give you advice and pay attention to the marketing aspects of that. And then the third thing I would say is just be strategic with your releases. Um, don't feel like you have to release your books on a certain timetable. But if you have an idea of how often that you can write or how much you can write, how long editing is going to take, and all of those things, then you can be strategic and plot out so readers know when they can expect your next book. And then because you have been traditionally published, you may forget that if you're going to be working with an editor as an indie publisher, as an indie author, you need to book the editor ahead of time. And I usually suggest that as soon as you are writing the book, start thinking about when it's going to be finished and you're going to be ready for edits, and reach out to the editor and book the editor, because good editors are often booked up months in advance. So those are a couple of things to make sure you don't miss. I would say one other thing is you're probably not going to be used to the fact that you can change and be in control of your front and back matter, meaning the things that go into the front of your book and the things that go into the back of your book. So be organized with that. Have a Google folder or a Notion document or a spreadsheet or something where you keep things that you can just copy and paste, and then be ready to update them, because now you have control of the books. You can update the information that's in there so it's current. So that's why being organized is really important. So there's just some advice for moving from traditionally published to indie published. You're in charge now. It's all going to fall on you. It's overwhelming, but it can also be really freeing. So good luck. And I wish you all of the success. All right, everybody, that's it for today's 3 at 3. Don't forget, you can always submit your questions for the 3 at 3, and I will answer them as soon as I can in the next one. Next, let me look. Our next 3 at 3 is December 7th. So not too far away. Is that next week? Next week. Okay. I think we're having one next week. So December 7th is the next 3 at 3. And then I think we'll have one more before the holidays, before Christmas. So if you have any questions, get them in. Again, don't forget, making the reader character connection is happening Friday. So please, everything froze. It's happening Friday. So make sure that you register. I will drop it in the chat. I did drop it in the chat if you want to look at the chat. Or you can go to my website and you will find that the link will pop up on my website. Thanks everybody for joining me. I will see you at the next 3 at 3. Have a great week.